Soul Garden.
Hello, my fellow Soul Gardeners, and welcome now to Just Ask Chris, a new series in Soul Nirvana where I'm going to be at soul service to you once a week, probably once a week, every other week at worst, answering your questions. And this is something that has come up a lot because a lot of people ask me questions, and I don't have the time, unfortunately, in my schedule to answer all of them. But I do have the time to sit down once a week and answer questions. So from this point forward, if you post a question beneath this video, I'm going to answer it, most likely in the order in which they were received. And the only time I won't answer a question is if I've already answered it before. So you might have to go through and see the episodes to see if I've asked that question before. And since this is the first episode, I thought I would answer 3 of the more popular questions I tend to get over and over and over again. All right? So let's get started. The first question I'm asked probably the most in life is, how do I determine the ruling planet of the day? How do you determine what planet is ruling? Well, the answer is, I'm not telling you. That's because I've been told by my guides not to tell you. This is actually one of the aspects of astrology where I think I'm pushing the envelope. I'm doing spiritual research on this myself right now. It is the premise of a book that I'm writing, and I do intend to share it, but my guides gave it to me about 4 years ago. They just told me this formula, basically, in my head. It was a really weird experience, and I started testing it out, and I was like, I'll be damned. This is correct. It's not in any textbooks anywhere astrologically. It's totally new, and it's totally me. So I totally intend to share it with the universe once my own intuition says it's the time, and for whatever reason, I can't right now. So watch your horoscopes. I'll always tell you what it is, and maybe you'll figure it out. It's actually not that complicated. Now, second question. What does it mean when I date my own sign? Are they compatible? Good question. I get that all the time. And this is a common thing that happens in life. When you date your own sign, most of the time it is what we call a mirror relationship. Now, we have mirror relationships other than our own sign. And what a mirror relationship is a relationship where the person in front of you is very similar to you, and that you are learning about yourself through their eyes. Now, that's true always. Everyone is a reflection of us. But sometimes a person is like 85% a reflection of us. Sometimes we do an intensive study on who we are. And usually these same sign relationships don't last, in my experience. They last for a period of time that is equal to the lesson learned. So it may take a whole lifetime to learn about yourself, and if that's the case, that same sign love affair will go on an entire lifetime. But most of the time, it is a duration of time that does begin and end. And a lot of times it's tied to a particular transit. So, for instance, if you are a Cancer and you're dating a Cancer, usually I'll find Jupiter is in Cancer at that time, Saturn is a Cancer. The Cancer race itself is redefining itself. And in that moment, the sign decided to draw in an equal to learn about themselves. They were going to learn about themselves anyways, and now they're going to learn about themselves through the eyes of another. So it's often a deep learning about yourself. Now remember, other people make different choices. What makes us all common in a given sign is that we all plug in through the same state of awareness. We're all kind of aligned with our motives, right? So the Cancer motive is to nurture. That's the Cancer motive, always to nurture and to survive and to remember, to honor the past. So you'll find in your mirror relationship that person nurtures, honors the past, and wants to nurture others. But he or she will do it in different ways. And it's from you seeing them do the same motive, exercise the same motive in different ways, that's the synapse point. That's the point you're like, I'm the same way, only I do it this way. And oftentimes, until you saw someone else do it a different way, you may not have recognized that in your own character or that in your own personality. So it's a learning transit. In some cases, same sign relationships are what we call twin flames. And a twin flame is your spiritual counterpart on or off of Earth. Because reality is really a duality, everything is in twos, everyone has a counterpart. So there is a soul that completely reflects you. That is your twin. That soul is sometimes not incarnated. Sometimes they're up in heaven or whatever that space is, and they're helping as a guide. Sometimes they're on the other side of the planet doing work where you don't have the time to do work right now, but they're doing the same work in different ways. Sometimes they are our twin brother or our twin sister, fraternal or identical. Sometimes they are our spouse or our partner. Very rarely are they our spouse or partner. That's because that's a very intense lifetime when you're romantically connected to your twin flame. But you are really learning about yourself with your twin flame in that case. So there are cases where it's a twin flame. You're going to probably spend most of your life having sex and not paying attention to what the earth is doing because you're so obsessed with yourself as you look at yourself. So that does happen. But overall, when you date the same sign, you're learning about yourself. And in some cases, you date the same time for a great partner. I mean, the best type of partner that goes along with everything you go along with is the same sign. So a lot of times you see people partnering up who are the same sign to pull off a particular task. All right, my third and final question for episode 1 deals with charts and rising signs. I get a lot of questions from people who are a double sign. So it's like a Leo with a Leo rising, or a Gemini with a Gemini rising. And actually, these types of people are pretty common around me. I'm not sure why, but they are. Now, when that happens, when your rising sign is the same as your sun sign, I call that a WYSIWYG situation. WYSIWYG is what you see is what you get. It's an old graphics term as graphics software started evolving here on the planet. And what that means is that you don't have a different sign to act as a conscious barrier between the world and you. Your rising sign is your ego consciousness. Your ego consciousness is the way you project a force field around you to represent you, to protect you, to be your character and charisma. It's a first line of defense. So if your sun is in your first house or 12th, and your rising is the same sign as your sun, you don't have that force field. You are what you seem to be. There is no other energy with other rules and other motives protecting you. So people who are double signs are a lot more vulnerable than others. They tend to be really straightforward. They tend to be really honest about who they are. There's no pretending. There's no facade. There's no some other consciousness representing them. They're a lot easier to read. They have less ability to defend themselves from dark or negative energies, and they're more easily manipulated by the world as a result. Okay? So those are the negatives. The positives are you can align your energy a lot more powerfully than the average soul. Your ego and your soul are automatically aligned. How often do we know that our ego is saying one thing and our soul is saying another? So when you have the same sign as your rising or the sun, you're not fighting with your ego. Your ego is always right there, agreeing with you and executing what you want. So the double signs like that tend to be a bit more powerful in the world. They tend to be a bit more penetrating. They tend to be a bit more influential as well, especially with sun in the first house, because that's like a star-like quality with all that power, right? Makes total sense. And overall, these signs who have double risings, usually I find that they are here and they are developing the ego consciousness in this lifetime. So they're usually not so good at defending themselves, not so good at speaking up for the truth, not so good in conflict situations, because they're not good at deflecting that vibration. And as a result, they have to become more savvy. It's also, in the last point, a very concentrated focus in a particular vibration. If your ego and your sun are the same sign, you're learning that sign in its whole expression, right? You're not taking little pieces of each one. You're learning the whole vibration. So these tend to be people who are in intensive study of a particular vibration or state of consciousness. So your Gemini, Gemini rising, intensive Gemini understanding, intensive communicator. So it is definitely a volume increaser. It increases the volume of the overall soul on top of it. And I'll tell you this, when people say, hey, guess my sign, the only time I can usually guess a sign at a party is when they are a sun sign with the same rising. Because 9 out of 10 times when I guess a sign, I'm seeing their rising. All right, that wraps up episode 1 of Just Ask Chris. Be sure to post your questions beneath this video window of what you would like answered, and I will do my best to answer them in the order in which they were received. Until then, live, love, be.